I was a massive fan of Gushing Over Magical Girls when it aired early this year. The concept of the superfan becoming the villain and that descent into madness and all the crazy, unfiltered shenanigans that it went crazy, and I loved every minute of it. Still, I could acknowledge that a lot of people weren't happy with the series. There was a lot of things that it did and got into, and yes, got extremely lewd, that they weren't comfortable with, and I fully acknowledge that. So, for those people that avoided Gushing Over Magical Girls, but like those concepts, there was a lot of people that are like, I like that it's doing that with the villain creation and all that kind of stuff. You have Acro Trip. We have Acro Trip in the fall 2024 anime season that is basically doing the same thing here, just it's... yes, very, very not lewd. It's very safe, it's very sanitary, and it's something that you can actually consume. But is it to the caliber of Gushing Over Magical Girls when it comes to the comedy and everything else? That's what we're going to get into with my first impressions of the first 3 episodes, so let's just jump right into it. Acro Trip opens up with our main character, which is Date Chizuko, and this is a girl that really just has nothing that inspires her. She's very kind of muted, she's not excited about anything, she has no hobbies, nothing that she's striving for. Well, one time when she's actually visiting her grandfather, she ends up coming across, yes, a magical girl. This area that her grandfather lives in has a magical girl that's actually protecting the city from the evil Chroma. This guy that's a villain that is completely unable to do his job properly. Well, this actually inspires Date. She's like, yay, finally something that I'm excited about. She immediately goes home and calls up mom and says, hey, can I stay here for longer? I finally found something that I like. And everybody's happy for her. The grandfather's happy for her. The mother's happy for her. She finally has something that she likes. But yes, it's this magical girl. She's obsessed with this magical girl. But yes, like I mentioned earlier, the big problem that we're having with this area is that nobody cares about this magical girl. She's not fighting something that's threatening society. The villain, Chroma, he's terrible at his job. Like his very first job that he took, like the first time he decided to become a villain, his thing was to flip the mat in front of the convenience stores. He thought that that would be the most evilest thing possible to do. And this is when he first met the magical girl. The magical girl stopped him, beat him up, stopped him from doing that, and he became actually obsessed with her. He liked the idea of her actually struggling with something, basically. And this is actually something that he ends up kind of pushing upon Date. As he confronts Date later on, as she's criticizing what he's doing and how bad of a job he's doing, he's like, oh yeah, like, tell me more. Give me some ideas. He's actually looking to Date to give her some information on what he could do in order to stop the magical girl. The villain is sort of pushing upon Date that she likes the magical girl for the same reason that he does. They both like to see her struggle. They like to see her being pushed back, pushed to the corner, and having to fight her way back up the top. Even though Date doesn't want to admit this, that's actually true. She loves this magical girl and loves her even more when she's fighting. Well, Chroma tries to recruit Date to join their organization, to become a villain, but she absolutely refuses it. She doesn't want to work against the magical girl. She loves the magical girl. Well, eventually over time, Chroma ends up actually trapping Date in his scheme. He fakes the fact that they got stuck in a storage closet and that they were going to miss the broadcast of Berry Blossom, the magical girl's escapades on television. He claims that he has no power to teleport them back out and that Date is going to have to sign a contract to become a bad guy in order to have the power to get them out of there. And sure enough, she does it. And thus, he tricks her into actually joining the evil organization. What sort of follows this is Chroma showing up on a regular basis to push Date into joining him for some sort of thing that he's doing in order to attack the magical girl. Most of the time she refuses to join in, or she just sees that whatever Chroma is doing is just totally stupid. All the way up to the point where they actually kidnap the mascot. They try to call the magical girl to get her to pay a ransom, only for both of them to pass out because the magical girl's voice is too cute. And that's the setup of Acro Trip so far, is basically the most dysfunctional villains trying to stop the magical girl and failing to do that miserably. So my thoughts on Acro Trip. It's very hard for me not to draw comparisons between this and Gushing Over Magical Girls. Like I said, they're pretty much one for the most part in the idea of, yes, the main character becoming the villain, being super thirsty for the actual magical girl, and them trying to do something in order to make the magical girl suffer or struggle, and that makes them, glee with delight. They're super happy to see the magical girl, and they gush over it. But I will admit that the comparisons sort of stop there. They don't really go any further than that. It doesn't go into the realm of Date, getting really deep into all the villains and fighting the magical girl on a regular basis. It's more so shifts very quickly to more focus on Date and Chroma. I think most of the show is just the villains. It's focusing in on Chroma and how dysfunctional he is, how all of his plots are just so simple and so stupid, and then Date kind of pointing out how very simple and stupid they are. It's sadly very little time they spend really conversing or interacting with Berry Blossom, the magical girl. And I think that's where the series is sort of weakened for me. I really find Chroma and Date's chemistry to be fun at times, but for the most part, it's very weak. It's very safe, I would say. And maybe that's me kind of envisioning gushing over magical girls while I'm watching this, but I feel like most of the writing around them is just very weak. Where the show kind of takes off is whenever they do actually have moments where they interact with Berry Blossom. Having those moments where they're near her or they're trying to get her involved with the situation, that's where it's funny. Like with the third episode. I feel like the third episode was a massive improvement for the series, and that was mainly because they actually had Berry Blossom at her house. She was trying to keep Chroma away while Date was just gushing over the fact that Berry Blossom is unconscious in her house and sleeping and dreaming about pancakes, and she's interacting with the mascot and talking about how the mascot films the magical girl and submits footage to the news organizations. And it's just kind of that pure nature of Date just being super gushing about the fact that the magical girl's there and how beautiful she is and how cute she is. And then it kind of shifts right into later on where the mascot comes back later on to give him a thank you gift, and they kidnap the mascot. And the entire time they're trying to figure out how they're going to call up the magical girl. They have these steps that have to be taken for this ransom process, and suddenly Chroma has no idea what to do. Like he jumped into this without realizing, oh, there's steps to this whole process that I'd never thought about. And then it turns them calling up the phone number that he got, which was the mascot's phone number. Date pulls out the mascot's phone while Chroma's on the other phone, and he's telling the mascot over the phone when they're in the same room to call the magical girl and tell her to come get you. So finally Chroma gets the magical girl on the phone, and then suddenly he passes out because she's too cute. This leads Date to finally have to reveal in front of the mascot, reveal the identity that she is one of the generals now of this organization, only for her to get flustered over the magical girl's voice on the phone. And then suddenly she's gushing in the room and bumping into furniture because she's getting boxed by her voice. Only for Date, after finally getting the courage to say something over the phone, instead of saying that they've kidnapped Mashiro, she makes it sound like she's a lost kids center. The idea of like, we have Mashiro here, please come pick him up. And she's like, oh, okay, thank you. Just completely ruins everything. Again, this is where the series is great. The first two episodes, not so much. The first two episodes is just mainly Chroma and Date just hanging out and just us pointing out how terrible Chroma is at his job. It wasn't funny. Like, the chemistry just doesn't have enough there. So that's all for me to say that I think 3 and onward has a great possibility of it being a really good series, if they can get more focus on the magical girl herself rather than just Chroma being a terrible villain. Yes, it's silly how terrible Chroma is. Yes, it's silly that he has his minions essentially hand out pamphlets, which essentially is a challenge letter to the magical girl, saying that he's going to go to this one park, sit on a swing, and if any kids try to ask to use the swing, he's going to reject them. That's his evil deed that will somehow get the magical girl to come. Which, yes, she does end up coming. Yes, she does end up showing up because that's an evil deed that she has to put a stop to. There is a silliness to how terrible Chroma's plans are, his plots. And yes, always kind of counter to Date when he asks her what she wants to do. She says, oh, let's kidnap somebody. He's like, oh my gosh, that's malicious. Like, wow, I never thought about something that evil. It's always something simple like not rewinding the tape or some stupid thing like that. There's also a nice comedic aspect to the idea that literally the base of Chroma is underneath Date's grandfather's house. Like, the grandfather found Chroma in a box like an abandoned cat, brought him home, gave him a crawl space to live in, and then he built this massive organization underneath the house. So while they're doing their stuff, constantly the grandfather just comes home, walks through the situation, and goes over and sips some teas. It's goofy like that. Visually, the show is where I think it suffers most. This show is not a good-looking show, which is odd because I never heard of the studio before. I looked up their page just to find out that they have a quote that says that they are apparently looking to the future of animation and bringing bold new techniques and technology to the future of animation. You're not doing it. Whatever you guys are doing, whatever this technology and animation, this new style and future of anime is, don't do it. Like, back up, come back. You're not doing a good job. I mean, there's a stylistic uniqueness to the series, but it's not a good looking series. It is not a good looking series. It's fine, it functions, but I would have liked a better looking series. Overall, the series is decent. It's got a good setup. I'm hoping that going forward we can get more Magical Girl focused and just kind of keep these encounters between the characters, just to kind of keep this chemistry going. There's a subtle hinting they're doing a possibility of Berry Blossom kind of being restricted in what she can do, which is kind of interesting. They have this one moment where Date is in this convenience store and she's confronted by Chroma, who's actually working there undercover. There's this little scene where they're there and then suddenly somebody comes in to rob the store. A human comes in and robs the store. And then while Date is, obviously freaking out, nearby, Berry Blossom, as her normal self, her normal attire, not transformed yet, she sees the whole situation and how Date wants Berry Blossom to show up, and she goes in and transforms and comes in and stops the guy. Through Chroma talking to Date later on, and through the perspective of Berry Blossom with her mascot, we find out the Magical Girls themselves cannot attack humans. That was why she had to take down the robber the way she did. They're not allowed to get involved with them. They're only supposed to be fighting the villain characters, these monsters that show up. As to if that'll actually turn into a story beat, it seemed like it was a very serious kind of tone given that whole situation. So I'm kind of curious if that'll be something that will come up later on, like maybe possibly Berry Blossom gets in trouble for that whole situation. It was kind of cute though, because it was a moment where Berry Blossom just wanted to do it because she knew that Date looked up to her. She wanted to be a hero for once. She's always so focused on stopping Chroma, who's just a failure as a villain, that she doesn't get to do this kind of stuff. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the first 3 episodes. I'm not going to oversell this series on anybody. It's fine. I've had maybe like 3 good chuckles. There's a couple smile points throughout the entire series. Like I said, the 3rd episode showed me a lot of promise. If you ask me my thoughts on the series from the first 2 episodes, I probably would say this is probably not going to go anywhere. The 3rd episode was a massive improvement. As to if they can keep to that, that's the massive question mark. But at the same time, I'm not going to put much hope into it. It's definitely a decent series. If you're a massive Gushing Over Magical Girl fan, you might get a subtle feeling of that series here, but don't expect too much. Again, I just kind of feel like this is a cool option for a lot of people that liked what we were talking about with Gushing Over Magical Girls, just didn't like all the inappropriate stuff in Gushing Over Magical Girls, which, yes, for a lot of people was literally what made it so great. But anyhow, that's my thoughts on Acro Trip. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, hit the like button down below, comment. Let me know what you think of the series if you're going to be checking it out. Additionally, if you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you get my content. I do news reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. I'll be doing first impressions of all the shows of the season, so definitely stick around. If you like this content and you want to support the channel more, I have links in the description below. Greatly appreciate it. Until next time, y'all take care.